Testing, can you hear me in the back? Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it worked. The people in the front flinched. Excellent. Okay, so if I can please invite you to come and take your seats in the front if you are here for this session. Please don't be shy. Please come into the front. It's much easier to hear us and to engage with us. We would like to make this interactive. We've got a fantastic panel. And I think people are still weighing up whether they are going to join the middle here or sit on the sidelines. You're going to be in the bleachers. Okay, and this is the other lot of the bleachers. Okay, fantastic. I think that we may get a few more people. Sounds like there's a plane flying overhead. There is, isn't it? We're competing with music and aircraft. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malini Mehra, and I am your moderator for this afternoon session, which is on Healthy Planet, Healthy People, Dairy Net Zero, or Call to Action. This is a fantastically controversial subject, and I'm delighted to be moderating it and learning along the way. Because, of course, with me we have 4 speakers. We do have on the list here 5, and I should just correct, just to manage your expectations, that unfortunately we don't have the 5th speaker here with us, the Vice Minister for Agriculture from Colombia, because he's been called into bilaterals, and it's a reflection of how live these issues are. He has a fantastic story to tell about the dairy hub in Colombia, and I hope that that challenge can be picked up by Charles. Thank you very much, Charles. So, as I mentioned, and I do have a job to be a little bit provocative and challenging, this is a controversial subject. Because, of course, the world is suffering from tremendous pressure on the global food production system, where we still live on a planet where almost 900 million people go to bed hungry, where 3.1 billion people don't have access to a nutritious diet. And as we all know, with the conflicts in many parts of the world, they cascade many problems, including, as we have seen, with the conflict in Ukraine, the mass hunger in parts of the world, which couldn't have been anticipated even last year. So we are dealing with fundamental challenges around food production, food distribution, nutrition, food security, food safety, lots to do with food. So without further ado, I'm going to begin by I'm going to just do a roll call of our esteemed speakers. First of all, starting with my left, we have, of course, Professor Johan Rockström. Johan really needs no introduction, because he is the glue stitching together all of the conversations at COP. Not just at this COP, but many previous COPs. Of course, Johan is a director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Change, before that at the Stockholm Environment Institute. And to his left, we have Charles Brand. And Charles, I do need to read your title for this one, is the Executive Vice President of Processing Solutions and Equipment at Tetra Pak. He's also a part of the global leadership team. And one of the extraordinary things about Charles is that Charles embodies the journey of Tetra Pak over 40 years. So we're delighted to have you here, because you are a reservoir of knowledge and experience of a journey. We have also with us, we have Hanna Sondergaard from Arla Foods. And Hanna is the EVP, Executive Vice President. Jargon and acronyms will get you in big trouble. If I was not a non-native English speaker, I wouldn't know what EVP was. Executive Vice President for Agriculture, Sustainability and Communication with Arla Foods, which is a cooperative, a milk cooperative. Did you know that? Wonderful. And of course, we are joined by Mr. Tanawat Tiensin, who is at the Food and Agricultural Organization. Another person who is very familiar with the speaker much in demand, I know you've been flitting about, but also director of the Division of Animal Production and Health. And we're going to get things rolling by an introduction by Johan, who has spent quite some time thinking about these issues. And Johan, I would like to invite you to kick us off with that first real question, which is, to what extent can dairy be part of a healthy, sustainable diet in the future?
Thanks, Malini and hello everyone for this really important session. And let me just, before coming straight at the question, just confirm your introduction here that scientifically we today have unequivocal evidence actually that the global food system is the #1 threat to the stability on the entire planet. So it's the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases. If you choose to sector if you kind of distinguish depending on economic sector. But it's also the number one cause of biodiversity loss, consumption of fresh water, land system expansion, overloading of nitrogen, phosphorus, nitrogen, another greenhouse gas, but also a major cause of pollution due to overloading of pesticide, but also overuse of antibiotics. So we have a problem, and this is well recognized in the science. So a chance to deliver on the Paris Agreement requires a transition of the global food system. Livestock is a key component of this. Livestock is in the order of the equivalent of the global aviation sector in terms of emissions. And we have a situation where the whole livestock sector is not only an emitter of greenhouse gases, but it's also one of the major determinants of whether we have stable ecosystems, which are themselves carbon sinks, but also sources of ecological functions. So we have a challenge of a rapid transition in the whole livestock sector, and dairy is at the heart of this, because without livestock, or without, dairy and livestock are fundamentally intertwined as a source of nutrition. Now, we have recently carried out an assessment of how do we define a dietary dimension of planetary health. And this is done through the Eat Lancet Commission work, which is the first time science gets together to scientifically define healthy diets from sustainable food systems. This led to what we call the planetary health diet. It is the best diet universally for the best human health outcomes, so to minimize risks of non-communicable diseases from heart disease to chronic obesity and diabetes. And we find that a flexitarian diet gives the best outcomes. So there is strong scientific evidence that reducing red meat consumption, but still maintaining a balanced level of dairy consumption, gives the best nutritional outcomes for all humans in the world. Now, this is a very good message for humanity, as it gives us a guide for a transition towards a healthy future. But it does mean transformative changes. It means going from 700 grams per person per week of red meat consumption in the global north to roughly 150 grams per person per week. But it actually means an increase in developing countries in the world. And when it comes to dairy, it still includes dairy as one important component in diets, but not allowing for more than something like 250 grams per person per week as the most healthy outcome, which again means reducing in some of the over-consuming regions, but increasing in the vast majority of geographies in the world. Now we take this healthy diet, to come to a closure here, into the sustainability agenda, and we find something quite remarkable, that if every human being eats the diets that gives the best outcome for health, we also tip the scales very significantly in a transition towards a decarbonized, sustainable future. So this is quite an interesting win-win, that dairy and animal, both husbandry and consumption, can be part of the solution towards a safe climate landing. And this is what we conclude being one of the most important levers of change into the future. But it requires recognizing the fact that there's no silver bullet for all dietary components in the world, and it's not a silver bullet for all cultures in the world. We need to be very careful in looking at the different social and economic settings for all geographies and cultures around the world. But that dairy has a very important role to play for a healthy outcome for both planet and humanity. I think that is quite well established today as part of the transition.
So thank you very much. Johan, you've laid out the prospects for a sustainable future for the dairy industry. And we know that the subject under discussion is fundamentally about how the dairy industry, the productivity can be maintained, but it can also contribute to a decarbonized future for the industry itself. So the viability of the industry, at the same time as delivering the planetary and the human health beneficial outcomes. So in this less than an hour that we have now, we're going to be tackling a couple of key questions. And the questions that I'm going to ask you individually hopefully will allow us to answer those two big questions. So the first fundamentally is about how are the key stakeholders in the dairy value chain responding to the global food and the climate challenges and working towards decarbonising the industry? And in particular, how can working in partnership drive that sustainable future for the dairy industry? So let me come to you now. Hannah, if I may. So the question for you really is around the second piece of it, around those partnership alliances. And Johan, as you mentioned, there is a real need to not only drive sectoral reform, but also ensure there is a rebalancing between different regions of the world. So my question to you, Johan, is how can we accelerate the efforts towards decarbonisation of dairy? What needs to change or better be transformed? And what's being done, for example, through your partnership alliances? Over to you, please.
So can you hear me? Yes. So thank you for this question. I think I'm very pleased that we are starting out this debate with the need to look holistic and actually look at both the nutritional element and the climate impact. We have within the dairy industry an organization that we are members of together called Global Dairy Platform, where we have created a big project or big roadmap, so to speak, called Pathway to Dairy Net Zero. And I guess what we are doing there is we are mapping out what are all the different farming systems that exist across all the different countries globally, together with Global Research Alliance. We are working with the FAO on then, particularly in the developing part of the world, how do we get the countries working and bringing food into their agendas, and in particular dairy. So that's one piece of the activities that we are working on. The second piece that we're working on is for the more developed part, how can we accelerate some of the technologies that we need to bring those areas where we have a lower carbon footprint to start with even further forward. And I think we all individually as companies working on various initiatives, and I can talk more about that. But I think what we're working on here is how can we achieve more faster by working together? And on the developed world, together with the FAO, how can we also transfer some of that knowledge that we have across to those developed markets?
So let me, in that case, we're still sticking with this subject of, you mentioned technology transfer, where the advances are there in the developed countries in the industry and how they're being promoted and capacity built in developing countries, for example. Thanawati, if I can bring you in on this subject, please, because I know that you are very much involved in the development and in the delivery of these partnerships. So your view, please, on how technology and innovation can contribute to that, and in particular what you are doing through the FAO to facilitate that.
Thank you very much for your questions. When you're talking about science and innovation, I think it's one of the key. Last 2 weeks at FAO in Rome, we just organized the first ever FAO Science and Innovation Forums. And 2,000 scientists around the world discussing how we're going to improve agri-food system to make sure that our agri-food system is much more sustainable, efficient, inclusive, and resilient. And that's why we know that while we are feeding almost 7.9 billion people, and will increase more and more. And that's why the issues of food security and also underlying nutritional security is also the issues of concern. And that's why, as our speakers already mentioned earlier, each countries, each regions have a different socioeconomic settings. Each country, each regions have a different need. Each countries, each regions also have a difference in terms of the level of development and the need for food securities and nutritional securities. And that's why when we are discussing about agri-food system transformation, and also we discuss with all the livestock sectors and also agri-food sectors, we make sure that we understand the issues of environmental impact. We learn from the past experience what we did something wrong. But we need to make sure that for the future, we will do better to make sure that we will have a better productions, better nutrition, better environment, and also a better life for all. For we as a consumer, we as the citizens of the planet, and also all of us who are working for us to produce food for us in the field, our producers, our farmers, our transporters, our retailers, because of the food system is so complex. But we know that once we really set our goal, as we are working with dairy sectors now, we are working toward pathways to dairy net zero. And also when I joined FAO, before I joined FAO, I was the ambassadors and permanent representative of Thailand to UN agency in Rome, and also in another capacities as the chairperson of the UN Committee on World Food Securities and also the advisory committee of the UN Food System Summit. And we know that if we want to transform, if we want to change, we need to make an action. And that's why during this week in COP, all the sectors are discussing about we need to make progress. And that's why yesterday, the day before yesterday, we are reporting, we are making the progress together with all stakeholders, because we know that the issue is so complex. Not only the member state can do, but we need support from private sectors, we need support from our farmers, producers, and also support from international organizations, and also financial institutions, and also research institutions as well. And that's why we need to move forward to make sure that we can make things better for our planet and also for our better life together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let me draw out some of the challenges there, because Thanabat, as you've mentioned, so the FAO in 2022 held the first ever Science and Innovation Forum, bringing together 2,000 scientists. This is fantastic, but it could have occurred 20 years ago. So we need to accelerate that innovation, because the dairy industry has been with us since the dawn of time. I come from India. Yep. We have a very strong culture around dairy. We worship the cow, okay? And my colleagues and I at breakfast had a bit of an argument when one of our friends said, oh my God, I can't stand vegan radicalism. Can't stand vegan radicalism because it's got no respect for cow culture. So this is an issue which is very deep, because it's part of our societies, our cultures, our lifestyles. So when we talk about decarbonization of industry, it's not like decarbonizing any other consumer good. We know that there is a huge challenge. We started off with that, of agriculture, contributing a third to global emissions. So there's a decarbonization challenge. There's a food sufficiency challenge, all of these. So I think in terms of the technology challenge, and I'm going to come to you with this, Charles, we have to step on the gas, right? So where is Tetra Pak on that decarbonization plus journey to dairy net zero?
Thank you for the question. And I just want to start with a small correction, because it's not 40 years, it's actually 38. I'm still a youngster. Yeah, so my assumption is that Tetra Pak doesn't need an introduction in this session about dairy, but we're a company that's involved in integrated industrial food solutions, so all the equipment on the dairy floor together with the packaging. I thought that Yuan gave a very clear description of the importance of the total value chain when decarbonizing, and obviously our role sits in that food processing and packaging area. If I just touch on a few different areas. The first thing is the equipment, of course, and there we have a job to do to reduce energy, reduce water, reduce the inherent food losses in the production itself, and to reduce the chemical usage. And this is something we're putting a lot of money into our development activities to deliver. Once we put that equipment onto the customer's floor, then it's being operated. And there we have digital systems, a digitalization of the operation itself, where we're gathering data out of the operations and through, let's call it artificial intelligence on its various different levels, making use of that data either with feedback loops directly into the production, with everything an aim to increase the efficiency and remove loss out of the system, or to provide insights to the operational management so that they can take longer term decisions about how to improve the production. So that's all about creating the most efficient production system possible for the dairy product that is going through the operation. If I then go into the packaging side, and we advocate for our aseptic packaging systems, it is the way to be able to take a liquid food product from the production site to the consumer with no waste, or literally no waste. It is a highly efficient system. And I think this brings up the topic of food waste, which has been discussed a lot in many different places here. And I think this is something we have to address and make sure that policymakers are actually incentivizing the reduction of food waste and ensuring that there is no food waste in the chain. The final bit, which is a very interesting area of upcycling byproducts of the production. We're engaged with a company called Enzyme, a very interesting company that produce enzymes. And an area that we're applying it into is in a byproduct from cream cheese and Greek yogurt is acid whey. And acid whey is a byproduct that's actually rather difficult to dispose of. But with this enzyme, you can upcycle the acid whey into natural prebiotic fibers. So instead of it being a problem, it suddenly becomes a healthy food ingredient to be used in another food product. So I think across these different areas, we as a supplier into the dairy industry have a lot that we can work with the dairy industry on and provide better decarbonized solutions for them.
Thank you. Johan, did you want to come in on that at all?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, okay, yeah. No, I love the way that you're describing it, because I must say, although the technical terms not everyone may be familiar with, what you get is, this is the innovation mindset. You've got to continue to innovate. We've got to accelerate that innovation. I'd like to come back to you on this, because let's spend a few minutes thinking about the people in the livelihoods agenda. So we know that 40% of all of the milk which is produced by small farmers. So how is what's happening at, upstream on one end on the technology, and how is it benefiting them? Where are they seeing the benefits of that?
Thank you very much. I think it's very nice when you talk, because I know really that you are from India. And I just went to India just in October. We September's on 12th to 16th of September that I can recall. We have the World Dairy Summit organized in India. And in India, only one country, 80 million families who are involved in dairies. And you times by 3 or 4 members per families, it's more than 300 million. And that's why all the Indians dairies, all of them are small-scale farmers. And that's why when we discussed, and I remember the first day when the Prime Minister Modi arrived and gave a talk, you can see that a lot of energies for small-scale farmers that the government of India would like to support more in terms of how to improve productivities, how to improve nutritional securities for people. And also when we're talking about small-scale farmers, even though when we talk about dairy sectors itself, we know that milk is more. The issue that we talk about milk is beyond milk. They are more than that. Because the issues of dairy sectors as well, it linked to livelihoods. It linked to nutritional securities, socio-economic development, employment, youth women empowerment, and so on. And that's why when we're talking about the issues of environmental impact, to make sure that we also need to balance all the issues, to make sure that all the issues has been taken into account. And that's why now we are discussing how we're going to work with all the livestock sectors, dairy sectors, and also agri-food business to make sure that we can build global, positive, balanced narrative. And also when we're talking about food securities, nutritional securities, healthy diets, I just talked with my colleagues and also young youth at Thailand pavilions and also some nutritionists. They just say that when they're talking about nutrition, some of them just talk about obesities, but they don't talk about the need of micronutrients, the need of others nutritions or nutritious food that support our children, support elderly people. And that's why all the issues, we have to look at the holistic view to make sure that we balance all the issues. And that's why I think it's very nice that we share our information, we share our thought to make sure that we can work together. We can work with all sectors. We can work with all other stakeholders. When I was the chair of this UN Committee on World Food Securities, I think it's a good example. We put the private sectors on the table. We bring civil society on the table. We bring consumers on the table. We bring government on the table. We bring research institution on the table. We bring government on the table. And we talk about our global policies. And we talk how we're going to translate the global policy into action at the country level. Because we want to see result. It's the same as the issue that we are talking at COP27. We talk here, we have heard for so many years about pledgings, about commitment from the government, from our leaders. But for today and tomorrow, we need result. We need action. We know that once we can see action, once we see result, we can think if we need more result, if we need more action, we can think how we're going to invest more, how we're going to work together to make more impact together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Hannah, I know you're itching to get in there, and I just want to provide a context for this, of course, because, you know, for every Indian, and we are one of the world's largest producers of milk, for every Indian, you grow up with this famous brand called Amul milk. And Amul was transformative in milk production in India. For thousands of years, we had a Stone Age approach to milk production until Amul came along. And it was an individual, and he revolutionized the field. And it was a cooperative that he built. Of course, we have stagnated in terms of innovation, not having an innovation mindset, and that's where this multifaceted challenge, not just production, not just nutrition, but decarbonization, you know, reducing the footprint. So I'd love to know what your story is on that. And
So actually, that was exactly the point I was going to make. I think I love this panel, but I think we're missing someone here. I think we're missing a farmer. You know, I think the journey we're going on needs to be a farmer-led journey. It's fine, we all stand here and talk about what we know and don't know and all the technologies that we can bring on stream. But if we don't get the farmers to go in front on this, it ain't going to happen. So I think from, and now I talk Arla here, we are a farmer-owned cooperative, like the one you are describing in India, not with quite as many cows as the one you are talking about, but we do have 9,000 farmers. And I think one thing that has become very clear in how do we accelerate is, yes, we can talk about technology, but we have to talk about how we make change happen on farm. We have to talk about how we create the right incentive on farm for them to change. That's what we need to talk about as well. And unless we have that incentive, we can come up with all the technologies that we want, but they're not going to take them. So I think getting the right incentive on farm has to be part of the equation. And then the other comment I want to make is, if we go back to smallholder farmers and the developing countries, another project that we have in GDP is a project called Dairy Nourishing Africa. And I think the learnings from that is that we have to take a full value approach or full value chain approach when we work there. And what I would say also is, yes, technology onto smallholder farmers, but I think the technology that these farmers need the most is how do you improve productivity? And I'll go back to my 9,000 farmers. The difference, 78% of the difference between the best and the lowest performing farmer is explained by 5 areas, 5 productivity areas: fertilizer use, feed efficiency, land use, cow mortality, and one more that I can't remember now. But you know, so it's not rocket science. It's more about how do we get good management also on farm. And I'm not saying we don't need technologies, because we definitely do. But I think we also need to think about the technologies that's about good management.
And that, of course, that is a social technology. Absolutely. So, Johan, if we can pass the mic over to you, please, for your contribution. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree that this is a really rich discussion, and it just proves the point that it's not black or white. You cannot say that dairy is bad or good. We have to find this middle ground where we're able to balance dairy production and consumption across all geographies, but also, as Charles points out, transition very rapidly towards sustainable dairy. And just to make the point that we I think have a lot of support for Tanawat's point that you know, fundamentally, I mean, the Indian context is a very good proof point there, that we need dairy as a fundamental basis, not only for nutritional health, but also for resilience in small scale, fragile communities where livestock and dairy is a part of a life insurance system apart from culture. We actually concluded, which is a number that comes across as very controversial and is actually not carried so far, but in our healthy diets from sustainable food systems assessment, we you know, conclude that the world needs to decarbonize entirely. We need to keep all carbon sinks intact on nature, but we actually conclude that to feed humanity, we will never be able to come to a complete negative point on emissions. We will have roughly 5 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year associated with the global food system. This is methane and nitrous oxide. We conclude that we simply have to recognize that if we want to take a responsibility, a moral responsibility for all fellow citizens on Earth, there will be an ecological footprint. What does this mean? Well, it means a rapid transition towards sustainable dairy, but it also recognizes that other sectors need to go negative even faster, because there will be dairy, there will be some methane, there will be some nitrous oxide, and we cannot entirely get rid of that. And that is also recognition of the value that it fundamentally has for culture and for nutrition. That said, I very much agree with Charles that there is so much we can do on shifting away from the really unsustainable dairy systems, which are the grain-fed, intensive industrial systems, and move towards more livestock crop system balanced systems, more grazing based, and definitely use technologies for getting feed that can reduce methane flux. And I mean, that's quite an exciting area where we can make a lot of headway while recognizing the importance of the fundamental role of dairy for the basic security of livelihood.
Thank you very much. Johan, I would like to just underscore what you've said about livestock as assets. That's a very important term, because if you are living in a fragile economy and you are a micro, going back to the farmer, your cattle are your assets, because they not only provide you with nutrition, with a commodity that you can sell, but with fertilizer. And so this is this holistic view of the value chain of the cow that I think, again, needs to be part of the conversation. But just to come back to your critical point, it's unfortunate we don't have the policymaker here with us. But this is fundamentally about policy choices, how you it's a bargaining process, isn't it? The emissions that at a national, regional, international level one can agree on come from industry or transportation or buildings or agriculture. And so this is where on Adaptation and Agriculture Day, these kind of conversations should be taking place. But I'd like to draw you out on the key question you asked, which is how can you create that change, incentivize that change at the grassroots level? What kind of enabling policies would spur that at the same time as addressing the macro question of what Johan challenged, which was we've got to have this global bargain of emissions from sectors and at country level. How do you bridge that? Let's get your thoughts on that. And I just want to say, we will come to all of you. It's not just a talking heads here, but we've got 15 minutes for Q&A, hopefully.
So I guess there's an overall and national plan for nations that need to be made, and what's the plan for different sectors. In Denmark, for example, the government has done partnerships with all the different sectors or industries and signed up plans for each sector. That's one way of doing it. There are many ways of doing it, I think. But in terms of creating incentive, I think there are many ways of doing it. Again, if I go back to the company that I work for, what we have done is, and this is based on us experiencing that and now I talk CO2, our reduction is not going as fast as we need it to do. And that's been a very intense conversation in our board, and our board is a farmer board. I just want to say that as well. So amongst them to say, hang on a minute, we've made a commitment, we're not going fast enough, what do we do? So they have decided that they need to create for themselves an incentive for the members of this cooperative to move faster. So we have created a model where we take money off the milk price and pay it back to the farmers who create or who perform the best on these 5 KPIs that I talked about before, or take action on a number of areas. So that can be management of manure, it can be carbon storage, it can be moving to deforestation-free feed, for example, and a number of other things. They can score points, and high number of points, high milk price. So I guess it's just an example to say, I think as cooperatives, as commercial players, we need to also work with how do we create the right incentive inside our businesses, amongst ourselves, for farmers to really transform. So that's would be my answer to your question.
Thank you. And of course, you're working with a very organized community. So you have the capacity to actually be able to deliver because you have that constituency that you're working with. So I think coming back to you, Charles, so let me invite you to have the last word on this before we open it up to a Q&A. So from where you're sitting in a different part of the value chain, how are you looking to accelerate that transition and contribute to the roadmap that, Hannah, you mentioned?
Yeah, so I talked earlier about these global developments and providing equipment into the dairy industry, but we've also got a group called Food for Development that work on a very local level, and I think Kuntanawat and Hannah and Johan have all described that local situation. 20% of all produced milk is actually wasted. You've got just shy of 1 trillion litres of milk produced, of which roughly 40% come from smallholder farmers. When you go to smallholder farmers in developed markets, and there are still some smallholder farmers, they are still usually, I think, part of a formal system. As soon as you go to developing markets or to developed markets with developing regions, that formalization of the system actually disappears. And that's where we see a tremendous amount of wastage, consumption of milk that may not be food safe, and a lot of different issues. So we've developed a concept called the Dairy Hub. The concept is around putting a collection hub in the middle around a number of farmers, and a number means maybe 400 or 500 farmers, each farmer might have 1 or 2 cows. The collection hub guarantees the offtake of milk from each of the smallholder farmers at a price so that they know they have a guaranteed income. And there is then technical support that is given to the farmers to help them with herd management, herd 1 or 2 cows, but managing the cows, quality management, ensuring that the milk is actually kept cooled and chilled before it gets collected. And then when that is then connected to a processor, that's when you get a sustainable chain of milk with a much lower food waste and less food safety concerns. You mentioned Colombia, and it's a shame the Colombian gentleman isn't here now, but we're in the throes of building such a dairy hub in Colombia. And a very exciting project, and I think that is number 8 or number 9 in these units that we have put together. And so that's one way that we're supporting also on the farming side.
That's fantastic to learn of the Dairy Hub. Where can we find out more? Charles, where can we find out more? Because I know this is one of the subjects. I have some fantastic notes prepared by the Vice Minister, and I would love people to go and learn more about the Dairy Hub.
So we can, Tetra Pak can help to provide those contacts. It is an established system now. We have this group, Food for Development, and so for anybody that is interested, Eya, who is here, who is head of our corporate affairs, can help to put in contact with that. But I think it shows that, you know, we're a company that largely engaged in the equipment and the packaging, but we see also, just by nature of the fact that we're working in many different geographies, some of the things that we can help with and connect up partners in the value chain, and help countries to develop their dairy sector in a faster way.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for that. And of course, it is all about delivering through partnerships. And the theme for this COP is implementation together for implementation. So on that note, let's give these guys a break. No, we're not finished yet. I just want them to have a moment to maybe have a sip of water, because I'm going to turn to you next and invite you, please, to raise your hands if you have any questions or comments to make. You've heard some very interesting stuff. And you certainly have your thoughts on it. So before I have to nominate people, let's see some hands go up. The lady over there, please do introduce yourself. Is there a mic that we can just... Yeah, a mic's coming to you.
You have water?
Thank you very much. My name is Caroline Aymon, the Executive Director of the International Dairy Federation. So we work closely with Global Dairy Platform, that's Hanne mentioned earlier. I just wanted actually to maybe make a little correction to one of the statements you made at the beginning, when you say that dairy needs something, that we need faster. Just to say that the International Dairy Federation was created in 1903, so 120 years ago, where we started working on hygiene and safety and working collectively. So that's what we've been doing for a long time. And same thing in climate action. We started actually the first LCA methodology for green gas emission calculation done by the dairy sector was actually done in 2010. Then we've done since then improvement, and we just launched a new version a month ago. So just to say that actually the sector is dynamic, innovative, and has been working together for many, many years. So I think it's important that we mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just, so when you say, fantastic to hear this, a long-standing organization, an international organization, yeah. And so how are you addressing some of those challenges about the transfer of skills, technologies, competencies that we've just been, discussing here?
Yeah, as I just mentioned, our role has been to provide those methodology. We always say you can actually reduce what you can measure. And actually one of the publication that we've made, that methodology to calculate the green gas emission, that's exactly that. A tool that everybody can use, then you can compare, because those are actually the work that we've agreed on. We just published something as a methodology on carbon sequestration. So those are the elements that we do that help actually the sector to move forward. And maybe mention as well the dairy sustainability framework that actually was developed 10 years ago, where we actually have made indicators to help us measure our progress. So I think that we've been able to provide the tools that the sector needs to move together. And as you say, we're all starting from different points, but the idea is that we don't leave anybody behind and that we provide the tools and inspiration. I think that's what's important as well. An organization like IDF is bringing everybody together to get inspired and learn from the experience of each other. And that's actually accelerate change. You were talking about how we accelerate change. It's by learning from others. And that's what we're hoping to do with actually sharing that practices between North and South so everybody can actually move faster and learn from what everybody has mistakes so we move faster.
Indeed. So that's what we want to do, moving faster together. And so thank you very much for your points of information. The gentleman at the back, please.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone is hearing because the mic, I have the impression I has a problem. Can you hear me, please? Okay. My name is Ivan Tamba. From my dressing, you can imagine I'm from Africa, but I want to be precise. Central part of Africa, Cameroon. And I love this country so much, Sweden, because I remember one time when I was on transit, that was last year, I was going to Glasgow. Some of you were in Glasgow last year for COP26. And I was stopped in, I've forgotten the city. I had to make my COVID test. And I came out with cash. They said, no, we don't deal with cash. And my credit card had a problem. So since then, I've had this country in mind. And I started loving it. Although I was stalked, but I love the country. Because the policies in this country are so enviable. By the time some African countries reach Sweden, I'm sure the war will be coming to an end. Sweden is so advanced. I enjoy most of your policies. And when I came in here, I was a bit lost because everywhere climate change, but here we are talking about agriculture, we're talking about communication, we're talking about food, though we are not eating, but we're talking about food. It's interesting because whoever understands what climate change is, he will understand that it has much to do with agriculture and food because we understand the effects of climate change on these two factors. But now, something is running in my mind, and I want us to think together. Cameroon is very interested in the Swedish model, transfer of technology, food and agriculture, the advanced method of technology. How do we come in? How can Sweden help us? I'm thinking at the same time, while I'm asking the question, we are interested in the training, the knowledge which you can pass upon us, but maybe through vocational centers. That's the kind of soft campaign I'm already sending on Sweden, that Cameroon needs you. You can come through transferring technology, through telling us how you can establish some vocational training centers, because it has all to do with education. Because when we are growing up, they tell us, don't cut a tree, don't do this, don't do that. That's a way of teaching us, telling us that we are fighting against climate changes without knowing, somehow indirectly. But now, you have to empower us. You have to make it more advanced because you have the know-how, you have the technology. So now, how do we help us?
Stephen, thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm just going to move to the next question. Your point has been taken.
Okay.
We'll come back to it. And I have a gentleman here in the front. If we can have the microphone. And again, please do introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi. Can we hear me okay? Hi, I'm Donald Moore from the Global Dairy Platform. And my question is not for the dairy people on the stage, but for Professor Rockstrom. And thank you for your introductory remarks. And you were sharing some data from the Eat Lancet study. And I guess after Eat Lancet was published, we all understood some limitations in the modeling work that obviously had to be there. And I'm just curious, I know we're now working on Eat Lancet 2.0 and we're all very enthusiastically looking forward to that. And I was just wondering if you could share with us some of your thoughts about what's likely to be in Eat Lancet 2 that we maybe missed in the first one, and maybe some further thoughts in terms of the timing on it and whether you expanded the commissioners, etc. But maybe just an update on that if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Let me take another question, and then we'll come to all of you, because we've had some contributions. That's the first specific question to you, Johan. So any other thoughts, comments? Helen, in the front, please.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting to hear from all of you. My question is, how do you reconcile animal welfare with cows as commodities? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. From Helen, and so Johan, let's start with that question which was directly posed to you, and you may also want to weave your response to this in.
Yeah, so perhaps I should just reiterate that, so what was the Eat Lancet Commission? It was the first time that health scientists, sustainability scientists, and agricultural scientists came together to scientifically define a universal diet on healthy diets from sustainable food systems. It was published in The Lancet, the world's leading medical journal, in 2019. And now we're just starting on the Eat Lancet 2.0 as a scientific charge for an update. Why are we doing this? Well, in a way, I don't know if one can talk about Chatham House rules in a pavilion like this, but it's because we believe we need an IPCC for food, and that this can actually informally go in that direction. So we are actually getting scholars from around the world in a very open nomination process from different disciplines, not through governments, but independently from the scientific community. And we're doing a scientific update just like the IPCC, but we're also, inspired by the IPCC, inviting research groups around the world to come in and do what in technical terms is called a MIP, a Model Into Comparison Project. That's how the IPCC runs all its climate risk analysis. You invite groups with the best analytics to run with the same data, the same demographics, the same economics, the same socioeconomic pathways, different scenarios into the future on healthy diets from sustainable food systems. Because in the first round we just used one model. It was very limited. Now we want this to be much more robustly anchored in a broader assessment. So I'm really excited about this. But finally, the breakthrough, we hope, will be to take this planetary health diet at the global level and bring it down to the geographies, to the different dietary cultures around the world, and see how can it fit with the West African, a South African, an East African, and South Asian, etc. diet, and how we can align. Because that was a criticism in the first round. Are you trying to impose one dietary, one plate of diets? And that was, of course, not the case, but now we want to adapt this locally. And we'll also look into much carefully the innovation space. So again, coming back to Tetra Pak and the work of Alfa Laval, how can we learn from business and from different sectors in terms of innovations to accelerate pathways towards sustainable, along the whole value chain, sustainable dairy, but also meat and agricultural food production.
Thank you very much. And please do just pass the mic along. Thank you. Who would like to pick up the question? So we had two specific questions over there. Why don't you touch on the one about, I think it was, yeah.
Do you want me to pick up animal welfare?
Yes, indeed.
Since I'm the one with the cows. I can talk about what we do in the company, and I know that most companies like us do that. So we have a standard. We call it ALA Farm standard. That where we audit all farms constantly on whether the cows have the conditions that and we have a number of metrics. Then we have some lead concepts where cows are getting more space and that kind of thing. So we're also evolving on that. So I think that's happening across. I'm going to say something here. Obviously, you have different farming systems and thereby different, what should I say, different conditions for this. I actually think cows have a pretty good life. And I know I would say that because I look after a lot of them. Not personally, but compared to a lot of other sectors, I actually think that most cows have a pretty good life. But it's an area that we need to keep working on. And the investments we make in stables, etc., make that better and better and better in our part of the world. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I'd love to have the final remarks. So why don't we hear from Tanabat and then Charles?
Charles first, and then I can.
Yeah.
You go first.
Shall I go first? Yeah.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to address the gentleman from Cameroon, not as a representative of Sweden or in any official capacity, but more from a Tetra Pak business capacity. As a company, we go into countries and help to develop those countries in their liquid food industry or other types of food. So I would say that I will leave my business card and I will have somebody contact you from our company that can see where we are. I'm not exactly sure where we are in terms of our position in Cameroon, but I'm sure that we can help in some way.
Thank you for all questions, and also I tried to wrap up all the questions at the same times. And also the first issues, actually at the FAO pavilions, we have the pavilions for food and agriculture in building 4. And during this week, we are also discussing with all our colleagues from the government, from farmers, producers, private sectors there to talk about agri-food system, food and agriculture related issues, how we can support the countries, how we can develop projects and programs to support, to make sure that we can build resilience and sustainability for food and agriculture at the country level, and how we can bring investment from our international and regional financial institutions to support. And for example, for Africa, just last month we discussed with the team and also with the international livestock research institutions, because now we have the livestock master plan for some countries in Africa. But now we want also to bring the investment plan together. We know that we have only master plan, is nothing move. And that's why we want to bring the investment plan together and talk with the government. But not only for the support from international organizations and others organizations can support the most needed countries or low and middle income countries. But the role of private sector is also very important to support in terms of development and technology transfers. And also I would like to highlight some issues that you mentioned about science and innovation for low carbon productions. I can give you one example, maybe two examples. In 1999, at that time FAO went to Thailand because I'm from Thailand. They went there to talk about crop livestock integration. At that time, even though I myself didn't get what they're going to do on crop livestock integrations. And then we start doing some work on the ground on crop livestock and soy nutrient cycling. How to use byproduct from crop. How to feed those to livestock. And then how we manage waste and manuals to soy to make sure that we can have a soy healthy soy at the end. And that's why this concept is moving forward. And also we start develop the project on biogas. In 1999, in Thailand, 0 biogas. No biogas in livestock farm. But today, more than 3,000 biogas from small scale, medium scale, and large scale in livestock farm. And many more go for agricultural sectors, agricultural producing plants, and even though to municipalities to make sure that they can also use biogas to generate the green energies. And you can see that in 2010, the number that we can capture carbon And also the amount that we produce electric power is a lot. But once we compare again in 2020, it's double. And now today, when the energy price is increasing, fertilizers price is increasing, and that's why we see that, okay, the investment that we do for science and innovation in 1999, and also the government have a domestic investment, is really show the result for 2022. And also another good example of India. When the government of India, when the Prime Minister of India, when the Indian National Dairy Development Board investing on small-scale biogas, when they are investing for improving feed and feeding practices in small-scale farmers, and also when they are investing in, they call it manual initiative, to collect all the manure from farmers to generate biogas. And you can see that these kind of actions, this kind of initiative is really make the result in the near futures. And we can see that every countries, I think we are concerned. We are concerned about the low carbon production, but now they are making an action. They're making a progress. And that's why all of us who are here, you are a champion. You are a champion who can move the work more and more. And also I would like to touch upon the issues of IPPC on food as well. Actually at FAO, now we are the UN Food Security Food System Summit Coordination Hub. And also now we have the scientific committees to follow up all what the national pathway are moving forward. And also at FAO as well, the UN Committee on World Food Security, we have this high-level panel of experts for food securities and nutrition. And those experts, those scientists also discuss about the issues of food and food securities and nutrition. And that's why we need to make sure that we make use of all the resources that we have, to make sure that we join our effort, to make sure that we move forward and we make action together, and we will see the result. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I think that what you've just spoken about with those flood of amazing examples towards the end of our session speaks to just how catalytic the investments over the last 20, 30 years, but importantly the Food Systems Summit last year was, in sparking global attention to this issue and the interconnections between the global frameworks, the need to have the science, the data. Johan, as you were talking, Johan, you kicked us off with your scene-setting remarks. I know that you've been following the negotiations obviously very closely. Today is once again, it's Agriculture Day. And I would like you to bring us to a close by offering us your reflections on where you see this roadmap over the next 5 years and this journey to dairy net zero.
Yeah, well, as you know, the discussions in the corridors here is that today food has placed itself very centrally in the texts for the declarations coming out of COP27. Of course, we may want to celebrate that if it stays. I think one should be rather just pulling up our sleeves and getting down to work, because it's 20 years too late, and we know that food is the make it or break it for anything that has to do with a manageable climate future, both in terms of managing with the impacts, but also as a mitigation source. So I think this session really proves that we have a lot of work in front of us. We have a very interesting agenda, because not only is it about risk reduction, it's also has been coming out very clearly, and the science supports that a transition towards a sustainable, zero carbon future for dairy and agriculture gives better outcomes also for livelihoods, for resilience, and for managing what will inevitably be a more jumpy future, unfortunately. I mean, we simply have to have a larger ability to handle shocks and stresses, and the livestock sector plays a role there. I would just give a little sense, a final warning. It's a pity to end on that note, but I think it's tactics. We're in a negotiation space. Let's not allow the food system transition to become an alibi for not mitigating and getting rid of fossil fuels. Because there's a risk here that our success, if we call it like that, and we say we're moving on food, we're doing great progress, it's a fantastic pathway to decarbonize dairy and livestock and red meat production, and we go towards healthy dietary transitions. It even gives us a kind of a nature climate solution, and you can talk about regenerative carbon sinks. All of this is really important, but it can never be used as an offset to the fact that we have to decarbonize the world energy system. And there is a little bit of a risk there. If you see some negotiating groups kind of almost becoming a bit over-enthusiastic for the food agenda. And so we have to be very scientifically strict here. And that's also why I would love to see that this dialogue is not held only in the Swedish pavilion. It needs to be held very broad across all zones here at Sharm el-Sheikh.
Thank you very much. And we will. So your summary and your caution deserve the applause, but we count on you all to cross-fertilize other pavilions and outside of Sharm el-Sheikh, of course. So on that note, would you please join me? First of all, thank you so much for remaining. We have almost double the number at the end as we did at the beginning. So it's a good thing you're in the front. Thank you very much for your questions, your attention, and please join me in thanking our 4 fantastic speakers, Johan Rockström, Charles Brands, Hanna Sonderberg, and Hanawa Thedsen. Thank you.